Guys, today's video is going to be different from what I normally do. I've been holding a lot of stuff personally in that I haven't spoken about on my channel, and very few have actually gotten to see what I had to say about current world circumstances. But in light of businesses and states slowly opening back up, I've been seeing a lot of things that have been bothering me, and I felt the need to go over some of it today in this video. For anyone who stumbled across this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is just something of interest. I do try to remain anonymous on my channel. I almost broke that today and put my face in the camera, but I look like a troll. I'm hot and sweaty. It's been a very long week, and yeah. All in all, I'm not looking so great right now, and definitely not camera ready. So, especially for anyone who's new, I work in the medical field. I am not on the front line. I work for a company that is second line, and what we do is we provide services and support to the frontline workers. Okay. So I've been seeing a lot of people advocating for just open back up, return to normal. People have not been social distancing, people have been protesting, people have been going through all of these things. And as Wicker Mama can attest, if she watches this, or sorry, unfortunately Random is she changed her channel name and I'm still not quite used to it, can attest, I blew up at friends of mine who I saw were advocating this behavior and encouraging people to rebel against the man. Well, I wanted to sit here and go over with people the cause and effect of that. I actually prepared index cards so I could kind of keep my thoughts straight. Now, I wanted to start off with the infamous historical reference that we see all the time in the news. And I will get into why this is an extremely important reference. But first, I want to set the scene of what life was kind of like in 1918 when the Spanish flu hit the world. So in 1918, the world had 1.8 billion people worldwide. Okay? In the United States, we had 103,208,000 people. With a less dense population, with modes of travel not as easy as they are today. There was obviously less travel between states and countries. People generally worked closer to home, unless of course they were military or anything of that nature. And in 1918, I can't remember if it was the First World War or if we were going into it. I know it was around that time, I believe. I'll put a note in here with the actual dates. In 1918, given our much lower population than it is today, that flu infected 1/3 of the world. So with 1.8 billion people, I know on the CDC's site it says 500 million people worldwide, but they also say that's an estimate and say it could even be up to 1/3, which is 600 million, which again is an estimate and not a solid number, but they know it's at least 500 million people worldwide contracted Spanish influenza, the N1H1 virus. Now, when I was on the CDC website, they said at least 50 million of these people died. They put down, I believe I saw a mortality rate of 2.5%, but my math is a little bit better than that. With 50 million people, it was approximately 10% of the people who were infected died. In my state alone, as I'm seeing things right now, roughly around 10% of the people in my state who have caught this virus have passed away. I know that's not the same for every state, but it is for mine. And during the 1918 Spanish flu, there were 3 major U.S. cities that were the primary hubs of the virus and the loss of life. And it's estimated a minimum of 675,000 people in the United States died. Now, I've been seeing a lot in the media. I've been seeing a lot of people saying, well, only 2% of the population will catch it. It only will kill 2% of the people. And I think they're mixing up what the RO factor actually is. Now, every virus has a classification, and it's this RO factor. The normal flu that you generally can catch each year hovers around 1.2 to 1.3 as an RO factor. The Spanish flu in 1918 was pretty much double that, 2.5. Now, what is an RO factor? For every one person sick, it gets spread to a certain amount of people. The RO factor is that number. So in 1918, the Spanish flu had 2.5 as an RO factor. So for every single person sick who got infected with it, they spread it to 2.5 more people. And then those people spread it to 2.5 more people. And then those people spread it to 2.5 more people. So you can see how quickly and easily it spread and why it was social distancing and cutting off communication and putting in precautions was necessary. And just like now in the world, we see a slowing of the virus because we've been doing this now for approximately 2 months. And as a result, states and things are starting to slowly open now, not as fast as people would like. But I want to try to put this into perspective. So, now we're into 2020. And we have COVID-19. Our world population is 7.8 billion people. That means in the world we have 6 billion more people than we did 102 years ago. So areas are a lot more populated. The world is a lot more densely populated with people. Even places that aren't main cities are very heavily populated. Look at your suburbs. Even some urban areas are quite heavily populated. Maybe not as populated as main cities, but still pretty heavy populated. In China alone, they have 1.393 billion people. And in the United States, in the last 102 years, we have gone, let me find my card, if I can pick them up, from a population of 103,208,000 to a population of 331.1 million. So in 102 years, we have more than tripled our U.S. population. Okay? Just trying to give statistical facts. You can find this information, just Google it yourself. I'm just putting it in front of you and saving you the time. So since 1918, we've seen a huge shift in how we travel. Traveling between states, between cities, traveling between countries is now an everyday occurrence. It happens all the time. Back in 1918, it would have been more of a special circumstance, generally speaking, but today it's like an everyday thing. People, because we now have paved roads, we now have better operating vehicles, we have better constructed roads and highways and all of that kind of stuff. People are now working further from home. They're not working so much within the confines of their own communities like many people were in 1918. And as I stated, having a much larger world and even country population equals denser communities. People live very close to one another. There's far less land per house. You look at apartment buildings and all of these kinds of structures that are now many more levels than you may have seen in 1918. So now I want to take the historic reference of the 1918 Spanish flu and put into real world potential of what can happen if we are not careful. Because right now I am seeing a great multitude of people having become numb to COVID-19 and mentions of coronavirus. I've seen a lot of people without masks. I've seen a lot of people saying, it's over, we're free, we can return to normal life, da-da-da-da-da-da. That's not true. The pandemic is not over. I know a lot of people have heard about a second wave, and I'm going to tell you right now, some communities and some countries are already seeing a second wave. As of yesterday, China is back in quarantine with 100 million people back home because they're seeing an increase in cases again. When COVID-19 began in Wuhan, its RO factor was 5.7, more than double the RO factor of the Spanish flu. So for every one person who was sick, they were spreading it to 6 more people. That's why this virus spread so quickly. Not just because of the length of time for symptoms to show up, or even if anybody shows any symptoms, but because of how many people became infected from one single person. Right now, because of social distancing and a lot of places taking a lot of precautions, we've seen that drop to 2 to 2.5. But an RO factor is not a stagnant number. The only way we keep it down is by taking precautions and practicing strong care to make sure that we maintain social distancing, we keep ourselves protected. I know none of the masks that we have stop the particles of the virus being spread, which is why social distancing is so important. But the reason why wearing a mask is important is if you happen to have the virus and are either asymptomatic or you don't know it because the symptoms haven't flared up yet, is it helps prevent your own spit, I guess you could say, from projecting as far as it does without a mask. And it just helps prevent transfer necessarily from the person to either other people or things in front of you. But social distancing is still extremely important because they have found that the coronavirus particles are actually much smaller than any filter we currently have available, be it through surgical masks, homemade masks, even the N95 masks don't stop this virus because the particles are smaller than the filter can stop. As I said, we've seen some countries, some communities already seeing a second and third wave. We have seen Japan send out an alert to the world begging people not to reopen yet because they thought it was safe and they opened back up, and now they are getting harder hit than they were before. And most everybody has seen that curve from 1918, from when it started off small, then it went down, which is where we are. Generally speaking, it depends on where you live, especially in the United States, because some governors have been more cautious than others. And then when that happened, they saw a very large spike. They put back in some precautions, and still you saw this happen. 3 waves happened. Right now, we are here. The only thing that is going to stop us being here is the choices and the precautions that we take. We have the fundamental responsibility to not only look out for ourselves, but look out for other people. I'm seeing a lot of people that because they either haven't known somebody who's gotten sick, they haven't been affected by it personally, think that they're somehow immune to this, think that because they're young, they're safe, they can fight it, think that because they're healthy, they'll be fine. There have been people who have been perfectly healthy, catch this, and die. This virus affects people of all ages, not just the very young and the very old. It affects everybody. And there is no way that we as a society, even with exposure to other coronavirus forms, have any built-up immunity. This is a brand new strain of virus that we have never seen before. No amount of walking outside, no amount of getting fresh air, although they can help build up your immune system in general, they do not build up your immunity to this virus. I'm talking from a scientific perspective here. So if we look at the RO factor from 1918, where 1/3 of the world was infected, and the large population increase from 1918 to 2019, if we revert back to normalcy, because we see this curve going down and people have started to open up, if we don't take our precautions and we apply the same mentality of what happened in 1918 as a historical reference to what could happen today, we aren't looking at 500 to 600 million people infected. We are looking at 2.34 billion. Actually, I wrote an M there instead of a B by accident. Billion people infected. And with a world population of 7.8 billion people, I can guarantee you that with this many people infected, it's going to be a lot more than 1/3 of the world who gets ill. That's a lot of people. Now applying the same 10%, not the 2.5% that they're saying, or 2%, because I'm taking based off of my state and based off of what happened in 1918. We are looking at a minimum, I may not have this math right, but I think I do, of 234 million people dying throughout the world. Now, already we've seen with our current world healthcare system that it could not adequately handle the amount of cases that were coming in. That if we didn't shut down when we did, the healthcare system was going to become overwhelmed. And we already saw in some areas where they had to make the life and death decisions. They weren't able to treat everybody because they quickly ran out of masks, gloves, materials, medicine. They didn't have enough ventilators, all of these things. They didn't have enough of anything in order to be able to keep up with the amount of people that were coming in the hospitals. And we started off pretty well stocked in the United States. So, let me actually keep those up because I want you to see these numbers and remember them. Right now, because this virus came in from China, because people aren't working as much, because people aren't spending as much money, imports from China are way down. Now, how does that affect us? most of the things that we buy in the United States come from China. And I'm not just talking about the inexpensive things like candles or, computers or anything. China also produces the materials to make masks. They are a major producer of plastic and plastic components and ingredients that even companies in the United States buy the materials in order to make the products. Rubber, medicines. All of these things are major imports from China, among many other things. But I'm just giving you a general idea here. And not just in their final state, but in the actual components and parts and ingredients that we need to make these things. We have had pharmaceutical companies saying they can't keep up with the demand for the medications because they can't get what they need from China. We have had companies that have switched from making textiles and clothing to making things like masks and surgical gowns and things like that for the medical community. We have seen companies switch gears from maybe making cars and such to making things like ventilators or shields, face shields. But even with all of that effort, they can't get all of the materials that they need to keep up with what they need to make in order to help the medical community, because the imports are down from China. So when you take into consideration that information, automatically the healthcare impact is they don't have enough of what they need. As it is, we saw shows like Grey's Anatomy and medical shows donate a lot of medical supplies to the medical community because there weren't enough. We have seen people, whether they have sewing backgrounds or not, buy cloth and all of these things to make masks that are rewashable. Everybody's putting in a great effort. But right now people are starting to think, hey, it's safe now. And I've seen more and more people stop taking the precautions that they need, especially the people who are protesting for their constitutional rights. Well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but a virus doesn't understand you have constitutional rights. A virus doesn't know anything other than reproduce, spread, kill. It doesn't care what the Constitution says you have rights to do. It doesn't care who you are, what your race is, what your wealth status is. It doesn't care where you live, what religion you practice. It doesn't care where you work. All it cares about is multiplying, spreading itself around, because it too wants to reproduce and spread like what? Rapid fire, so it can keep going and stay living and affect as many as it can in its wake. That's all it really cares about. Not that it has feelings or anything, but that's basically the internal code of a virus. Now I want you to take a strong look at this number right here. That 2.34 billion people. Our healthcare industry could barely keep up with what happened at this low point. When people stop taking precautions, when people stop caring about what they're doing, and I apologize for the background noise, people are being moronic, setting off fireworks because it's a celebration now, I guess. Now that people are stopping taking precautions and they don't care anymore, when this spike goes up, we had New York and Italy as major centers of where they literally had to pick and choose who lived and who died, because they couldn't tend to everyone and they couldn't save everybody. Hospitals in Italy were so crowded they had patients laying on the floor because there weren't enough beds for them. People who were previously completely healthy contracted this and died simply because there weren't enough beds, there wasn't enough staff, there wasn't enough medication, all of that. Same thing happened in New York. And it's not just the patients who died. We had actual healthcare workers die as well. And for a while there, they were dropping like flies. There wasn't an hour that went by that I didn't see another report of another medical person who died because of the COVID-19 virus. So with all of these people not taking precautions anymore, it's not just going to be in New York and Italy that's affected. It's going to be globally. There's going to be such a large influx of patients and people. There is not a snowball's chance in hell that the medical community is going to be able to treat or help all of them. Now, remember this 10% died? 234 million? Remember how I said that with this many people affected, it's not just going to be a third of the world infected? Well, now's the point where I get to tell you that this 10% that happened in 1918 is going to be a much greater number than 10%. With a very large influx of patients, more medical staff will die. I'm just giving you a very blunt statement here. There will be fewer people to tend to the patients that are coming in. With that major issue in Italy and New York now becoming a global issue, you're going to see a lot more having to pick and choose who lives and who dies, who gets access to a ventilator and who they're just going to let go. And this 10% number is going to go through the roof, to a point where you probably can't even imagine it. The entire structure of the world as we know it is going to change if we do not take the right precautions now. Every single choice you make means the difference between whether or not we keep this curve flat or whether hundreds of millions of people die. I need you to take this seriously. We all need you to take this seriously. And we all need you to realize this impact. These aren't numbers I pulled out of thin air. You can do your own research and Google these things. The RO factor in 1918 is similar to the RO factor that we have right now. But we've seen it a lot higher. This number can very easily come back. This one person infecting 6 more people can very easily come back if people don't take the proper precautions. And this number will cause this number to climb astronomically. So, as you go about your daily life, if you see people inclined to not take this seriously, if you see that people inclined to protest or say this isn't a big deal, I want you to spread this message. You don't even have to send them my video. Just we have hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, that we can help prevent get sick and die by continuing to take this seriously. Every moment of every day matters. Every single decision and choice you make matters. So please, for everyone, please continue to take this seriously. Continue to be ultra diligent, and if your local government is stupid enough to open things back up, don't fall for it. Believe me, more than anyone, I know the impact on society that this situation has been having. From people out of work, to depression, to suicide, starving, homelessness, joblessness. Government isn't acting fast enough to help anybody. If you're going back to work, be diligent, especially about if you are somebody who doesn't work in a bubble. For me, my work environment is the same people every single day. So in a way, we are our own bubble, community bubble. Maintaining those bubbles and not venturing too far outside of them will help ensure that the curve stays flat. Because the more people of unknown circumstances that you encounter, the more likely that this is going to increase again. I would ask that please don't go to the beach or go to places that are going to be super crowded. I know it's hard as human beings to lose that human connection with people. We are social creatures. Our lives are filled with social aspects of talking to people, hugging one another. I know that loss of affection and loss of connection is greatly affecting all of you. I know that, and I know I'm asking for a lot. But temporary pain and ensuring that we save hundreds of millions, if not more, lives is more important than any single person. Preventing this virus spreading out of control is more important than our civil constitutional liberties. And it's certainly more important than getting a haircut. So with all of this said, I know this is a very heavy subject and a very heavy video, and I will be putting out something that's lighter later on. But please, take this seriously. This was not an easy subject for me to delve into, but somebody had to put a voice behind it and make the connection between what happened 102 years ago and what's happening now. And put it into real-world connection of what can happen based off of what did. Those who are ignorant of history are doomed to repeat it. Let's break the cycle, please. So with all of that said, thank you for watching, and stay home, stay safe, stay protected, and stay healthy. I love you guys.